Hey folks, Pro Angler Dean Rojas here, and you're on BassResource.com talking about some new products and why and where and how we're going to throw this particular bait. So this is the new Speed Demon that I created with Spro. It took us about a little over 2 years to get this thing right to where I like to shallow crank, so it's a big deal for me to go ahead and fish shallow water while I'm frogging or flipping or pitching and throwing a shallow crankbait. So, and we're going to go over a little bit about just why we choose that kind of bait and why it's efficient in covering water and getting bites and be able to hook the fish and land the fish and all that good stuff. We're going to talk about rod selection, line, gear ratio on the reel. All those play a big factor in why a Speed Demon works as well as it does. So basically, this bait runs about 3 to 5 feet deep, and you can cover a lot of ground with it. You can fish it in a lot of different areas. You can fish it in around rock, laydowns, edges, grass edges, hard edges, sea walls, wherever you're fishing, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet of water, that a bass could be up in the shallows, lurking for prey, whether it be obviously a crawfish pattern like we have our crystal craw, or a shad pattern, which has a lot of the characteristics of a bait fish in and around those time of year and so forth. So I like it because I'm able to break down a body of water very quickly and cover a lot of water. And it's a high percentage bait where you're going to get a lot of bites on it. It's not a big bait, so it's pretty small in comparison. It's probably about 2.5 inches in length. The body itself and the bill is another inch, but it's still, you're going to get it's almost finessey way of getting them to bite the crankbait. And for time of year, it's a bait that you can use all year round. It doesn't matter if you're fishing in the summertime on rock, or you're fishing in and around grass. In the summertime, springtime, it's great to be able to fish around spawning flats where the fish might be, and it's a great bait to be able to knock it off cover, whether it be fence posts, stumps, laydowns, concrete, whatever obstructions in the water. You want to be able to have a bait that deflects off of there and doesn't get hung up, and you get them to bite the bait. So for water temperature is you can throw this anywhere from in the 40s all the way up to 90 degrees if you want to, and that's such a big spectrum of water temperature range, and that's why it's such a good bait to throw. You should always have one of these tied on all year round, because it's one of those baits that you can throw all year round and catch something on it. So like I said, it's a high percentage bait. It could turn a rough day on the water into a great day on the water by tying one of these on and going down the bank and catching 2 or 3 throughout the day. So and that's what you want. You want to have a positive experience there out on the water and being able to catch as many fish as you possibly can on that. So for gear ratio wise, I don't go anything higher than a 7-to-1 on this, even though this has a real tight wobble to it, and it's called the Speed Demon for a reason, is because of the tight shimmy that it has going through the water, and you can burn it as fast as you want, and it's not going to roll on you. And that's really key. That was one of the major things that I wanted it to be when we designed this bait, is to where it wouldn't roll, that you could burn it as fast as you wanted to and kill it, and draw those reaction strikes out off the bass. Going the total opposite spectrum of that, you could also use it on a 5-to-1 gear ratio. During the winter time or early spring, when the water temperature's in the 40s, 50s, they don't want it that fast. They don't want to move it that quickly. That's where the slower gear ratio, your 5-to-1s and 5.3s, and even a 6.3 will work as well. You just got to slow down your retrieve, and it acts the same as a regular, as a slower gear ratio reel. So, and a lot of that is a lot of stop and go, a lot of crawling in and around the cover, and keeping that bait in the strike zone as long as you can to give the fish every opportunity to bite the bait or take the bait while it's going through the cover. And this is exactly what you want. It's buoyant enough to where you can crawl it on the bottom, and it's not going to get hung up. It's going to back up a little bit, so the hooks aren't going to get caught in the cover that it's fishing. So it has a lot of attributes to where it's going to help you be a better fisherman and help you be able to get the bites that you need. Pound test wise, I use FC Sniper Sunline for all of my my cranking. The line is a joy to fish with. It's once it's wet, and even before it's wet, but it's very soft and it's supple, but it's really strong, and that's what you want. And you know, it's the highest grade of fluorocarbon that Sunline makes, and it's the best out here for what I have to do. Not necessarily you have to purchase that, but it's what I prefer for the hook and land up ratio on that. Pound test, you can go anywhere from 10-pound test line, depending on if you want to go have the bait run a little bit deeper, if the water is really clear and you need to get down a little bit deeper, or if you're fishing anywhere from maybe a little bit dirtier water, you can get away with a heavier pound test. So you can throw anywhere from 15 to 16-pound test line, whatever you're comfortable with. If you're fishing around some really thick wood and you need to be able to. If you hook a fish, it's going to immediately take you into cover. You want to make sure you have the line size and the capability to be able to fight him through all that and let the line absorb a lot of the thrashing in and around the cover to where it's going to scour the line, but it's not going to break, and that's what you want. So, and again, the line size will dictate how deep the bait goes. The lighter the line, the less friction, the more it's going to dive into the water. And so the heavier the line, it's not going to dive as deep. It's going to stay more on the surface, and that's what you want for that application, if that's calling for that as well. The action rod that you want to use, it all varies. Some guys like to have a 7-3. Anything over 7 feet is good. I know some guys use 610s, 611s, that are where they're making small little pitch casts in and around docks, around wood, around laydowns, whatever you feel like doing. And that's the beauty of all of it, is you can choose and which one you want to do and how you want to fish the bait. So I like to 7 foot is like where I'm at. 7-3 is good when I need to make longer casts. But if I'm just fishing in and out, around cover, like a 7, a 7-1, a 7-2 are right there in my wheelhouse, where this bait is going to be optimum for your casting ability, your accuracy, and your fighting the fish. As you hook the fish and landing the fish, you need all the rod to bend and to move and to absorb the shock so the fish doesn't come off. So all those attributes culminate into fish landings, and that's what we all want, is be able to, once we hook them, we want to be able to landing. And that way the reel, the line, the rod, and the bait are all working in unison, to get the fish to the boat to where you can either net them or grab them in that scene. So, and those are just one of the process of just being successful, is those little details like that. And you'd be amazed, for the amount of time I've been doing this, how much those little things have added to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 fish throughout the entire season that made it a great season. It all comes down to just a few fish. So once you realize that and how important it is to have sharp Gamakatsu hooks on there and baits that work properly in line, and using the best stuff out there on the market to ensure that a successful land, and weighing the fish, and releasing it is where you want to be at. So for the most part, I mean, you can throw it all year round, and so that's the thing that's so great about the Speed Demon, is it's a great fish catcher, and you can, it's easy enough for a novice guy to throw it, and even a top tier pro as well. It fills the whole spectrum of the angling curve to where you can just go out and have a good time. So I'm Dean Rojas on behalf of Bass Resource. That's what's about on the Speed Demon cranking.